the CTO and the Arcane Bear. We have Mike Levine. He is one of the co-founders of Mojo Planet. Mike, it's great to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me here. Fun day to talk. Excited to have a fun conversation.
Yeah, anyone that's been a fan of the channel for a while knows that we like having interesting conversations. And recently, for me, Mike, gaming is totally new. Tell us a little bit about your background and how we got here.
Sure. And I was going to just admit right off the bat that I'm talking today having COVID, so I'm either going to say something really dumb or really brilliant or both. So bear with me, Bear.
Perfect.
But I'm doing fine and totally coherent. Yeah, so I started in the games industry a long time ago in the 90s, early 90s at LucasArts. I moved to California thinking I was going to do other things, go to grad school, saw a job in the paper one day, Lucasfilm Games. I was like, that's interesting. And it was really focused on PC games at the time, which I knew very little about. So I had called a friend on the East Coast who still ribs me about it to this day. And I was just like, tell me some PC games. I could tell them, but, because I just didn't know any. And anyways, somehow I got in there. Just really clicked right away. It was an amazing time to be there. I started when it was about 60 people. I left when it was 350 in the late 90s. And, a lot of those games are still remembered. This is amazing. And New Monkey Island is coming out soon, which I'm excited about. I know people who worked on it. So yeah, that's really where I cut my teeth, moved up the ranks, kind of started the visual effects department there, worked on a lot of non-Star Wars games and Star Wars games, and then eventually left to form a startup with friends I had from ILM, which was the effects side. And that sort of got me into the startup world and brave enough to think, I could do things on my own, and eventually came back to the East Coast, to the US where I'm from, and started my own companies, first doing service work, and then it's just really turned into a mix of doing our own games over the years. And we've always pushed the envelope. I've always liked what's new and cool. And, before we got into the Web3 world, we'd spent the last 5-7 years really in the XR world, AR, VR. Had gotten into that very early as well, went down to Magic Leap when it was, a giant sort of like going to the optometrist really. And so we got in very early and kind of, rode that pony as far as we could and sort of looked down to the edge of the cliff. And, I believe in the future of that space, but we sort of the realization that it was so far away still, from mass adoption. You can only hold up your phone so long, and have a cool AR experience. And so once I caught wind of blockchain, as we were making Sam and Max, the VR game, I got consumed with it and the possibilities of, what it meant to video games.
Yeah, there's this idea of being right and early, but sometimes when you're right and too early, having the staying power to get to the point where being right pays off is a little bit tedious. So you've got a lot of experience with games in the background. Tell us a little bit more about the team that you're working with as well.
Yeah, well, my core team, which has been with me for almost a decade, Eric Campanello, who is our current art director, his background worked on some of the original Call of Duties and Activision, other games, and Command and Conquer. So he also just has incredible experience doing pretty much every job in the art pipeline for games. And we've brought on some amazing people. We have, 4 or 5 programmers. The team's about 20 people now. Plus, we're working with a few partners to help us. And so, we decided to make something pretty rich and complex. Like, it's not colored monkeys, So every character we're making takes a lot of work. There's a lot of serious crafting that goes into it. Jim Rice is our lead 3D character modeler, who's a guy we worked with way back at Lucas, but he spent the last almost 20 years working at EA as one of their, lead character modelers on Madden and other sports games. And so we got a great mix, and we got some blockchain experts on board as well, helping us with that side. And yeah, we've grown into a great team.
Just wanted to warn you to not knock the colorful monkeys. This is,
No,
I mean,
I'm not mocking any colorful monkeys.
one of the fun parts here for me, Mike, is that we've been investors mostly in technology, and this is kind of one of the abstractions about gaming we think that's so interesting is I have no idea what people like. This idea of Stardew Valley, I think is a great example of one kind of designer with just a very unique niche type of idea that took off. Or if you had showed me that, would never have believed you that it would be a popular game. So I try not to think I know anything about art and culture at this
Oh
point
no,
anymore. I'm like, hold on a second. I know
I think
nothing
that
about the
started for
gaming
me
world.
when when South Park happened, which I loved. I was just like, okay,
Yeah, South Park
maybe,
is another one of my favorite examples of this
yeah.
kind of iconic branding that comes out of probably, I assume that it's part of the relationship of like myself, like our a little bit of older, not so young culture anymore, who grew up with like Atari and these kind of pixelated video games. That's why I thought the crypto punks did as well. And there's actually a question I was hoping to keep till near later on, but let's go here while we're here anyways. Because of this type of cultural adoption and branding in video games, how do you try to fit what the market is looking for in terms of like art and culture? Yeah.
I mean, this is a, age old question when you're doing anything creative. And I think, for me personally and our team, we decided a long time ago, and it's just sort of looking at the things we love the best and sort of seeing how those people operate, is that as soon as you start to think the way of like, what should I make that the market wants, you're pretty much down the road to hell. Okay. Like, you have to make something that you love if you want it to be authentic, and hope that resonates with other people. Because if you're making something that you like for other people, you never have that like internal compass, of what it is. You're always second guessing, well, what would they want, and so it's tricky thing, honestly. And believe me, we've worked on many things over the years where it's service work or other things where you do have to, when you're working on My Little Pony, it's a very different mentality, and tried to sort of get into the space of that user versus what we want, kind of, and what we would like to see, really.
So back to the start of this, tell us a little bit about Planet Mojo and what you guys are working on at the current moment.
Yeah, and cool day to be talking, because we just debuted our cinematic trailer, which we put a huge amount of work into, and worked with our friends out in San Francisco, old friends now at a company called Swordfish, and ex Pixar ILM people. So encourage people to go check it out to learn a little bit more. It's a cinematic trailer. It's not gameplay. We're not making any bounds about that. We will be showing gameplay soon. But Planet Mojo is this mysterious world which you'll be finding more about over time. And oh yeah, here we go. And it's inhabited by these different clans, which we've been revealing on Twitter and other places. And this trailer you're seeing kind of sets the scene, the backstory. The strange object hits the planet, and this sort of technological virus, which we call the Scourge, starts spreading throughout the planet, infecting things. You'll see our sweet little alien squirrel and what happens to him here. And really, it's a story of nature versus technology. And we wanted to create a fantasy world, first and foremost, that people can escape to, with all kinds of storylines and characters. But we also said to ourselves, if we're going to be making a metaverse and people are going to be spending a lot of time in it, we also wanted to tie that to the real world and sort of have that message, not forgetting about nature and the real world we're in, and the problems, that our planet faces. And so, that's why in our first NFT sale, we did something where we planting trees for everyone who bought an NFT. And we're going to sort of keep those kind of messages as we tell this story. We don't want to be heavy handed with it. It's really left for people's interpretation, but the story is something that we're going to evolve as we create these games and progress it through different games and the medium of Web3. So yeah, our first game is an auto battler, auto chess game. If people know that genre, it's kind of a niche genre, but very popular with AAA gamers. It's not really chess for people who don't know it. It sort of has chess-like things where you're putting your characters on the board and strategizing, and then the auto battler part kind of takes over, and there's a lot of great eye candy. But it's a PvP game. It's very tournament based, and we loved it as a starting point for blockchain for reasons I could talk for a while about, but just because of the sort of cross appeal, easy to pick up, lots of different assets to, sort of turn into NFTs and give players ownership of. And yeah, so we're having a lot of fun building it.
Well, let's talk about the productive nature of the technology. I think a lot of people in the old like SaaS or video game sector probably don't see the inherent value of something like this technology. Now, there's probably reason for that. I mean, Kodak didn't even recognize the digital camera when they brought it to their doorstep. You own the paths of the damn thing. Like, come on, guys, this shouldn't have been that difficult. But it inevitably ends up being difficult for people because they're siloed within a building space. For those people that don't know, the video game sector is huge. It's hundreds of billions of dollars on a yearly basis. A lot of this, I think Fortnite is a good example of people buying products within the game, skins effectively. We've seen secondary markets. Now we know that there's already a massive consumer base there. But Mike, what kind of things is the technology making possible that I guess other people don't yet see yet, you figure?
Totally. And if I can just add to your little Kodak story briefly, then I'll answer that because I also love the story that I was told personally by John Knoll. But Photoshop, right? Of course, everyone knows Photoshop. Kind of probably the most revolutionary piece of graphic software made in the last 30 years or so. But John Knoll and his brother, he worked at ILM, so I got to hang out with him a few times. And the story of how when him and his brother first invented it, they brought it, to Kodak, to all the big players, to Adobe as well. And every single one of them was like, why would anyone want this? It literally didn't even, like, there was no context. And of course, then come back around, Adobe ends up eventually buying it. But yeah, I love stories like that. Yeah, I mean, I think for games and the way we look at this space is, this is a revolutionary, evolutionary moment for games, which has happened many times. You've seen these paradigm shifts that happen in games. Different platforms emerges, from floppy disk to consoles to mobile to free to play and social games in there somewhere as well. But this almost feels like the biggest one, because when you start, for the history of video games, right, people have sort of been buying into this, I don't want to call it lie, but misconception that, this is their character, this is their weapon that they fought so hard for, when the reality is they don't own any of those assets. They're sort of have leasing them for the life of the game, etc. And there's always been these, illegal, essentially, platforms where people are trading assets and buying accounts on eBay. And this is the evolution, really of that, where players are going to have agency and ownership over their assets for the first time. And I think that is what I'm realizing above all the other things about Web3 games, play to earn, all that stuff. This is the part that's really going to resonate the most long-term with gamers. And we can get into play to earn and that side of it, but that's a whole other, sort of, it's a big part of how we got here. But I think people in this space are realizing, and I wrote a tweet thread about this last week after coming back from New York, play to earn is just dead. Anyone who's using that acronym at this point is, living in a soon to be forgotten era. And we've had play and earn on our website since day one, but I'm just starting to realize that just even using the word earn is kind of silly for what we're doing. And it just shifts the whole focus of where you don't want it to be. You can play Magic the Gathering, great card games, been around 30 years, and they have tournaments that you can enter and play, win millions of dollars in, but no one calls it, magic and earn. You have to have a great game first, and the earning will come out of that.
Right. I think this, Mike, actually comes from a different part of the sector than the gaming sector specifically. What's unique here is we're dealing largely with technology that's formed around governance, identity, and monetary values first and foremost. There's a huge amount of security. I'm just as a side point here for conversation's sake. What I always found interesting and where I thought we would go first was post to earn. We were seeing companies like Steam develop in 2017, where you were being rewarded for Steam token for how much you posted and how much other people liked your post. And in effect, being rewarded in the growth of kind of the network of the brand. And this is one of the interesting parts I thought that most times you're disconnected from. Like I use Netflix as an example because you can pay every month to get the service, but you in no way are rewarded with ownership over Netflix service. And this is one of the big disconnects for people is earning some type of ownership within the thing that they make popular. Like the reason why Netflix or Facebook or any of these companies have such a large value in terms of the stock market is because of all of the everyday people that use it that actually don't own any of it. And this is always the disconnect I felt was the biggest problem for the average community consumer, whether it's in a video game or in a social media model or a governance model effectively. So I think that like this play and earn, play to own, this mentality, and I agree, I guess here's where I agree with you, is one of the most hands down powerful prospects because the network effect rewards everybody. So if you happen to tell your friend to join the game, the growth of the network, you're rewarded through the growth of the assets, whether it's the ownership of IP or the token economies. But in effect, it's that huge brand growth that brings everybody up with it. Just as a side point, because I didn't know anything about games until basically the last 2 years, Mike. I was like, okay, now I'm going to figure out games.
Good luck. Yeah, it's a funny industry, as hard, layoffs yesterday at Niantic and Unity, companies making billions of dollars, and I think everyone scratches their heads a little bit and whatnot. But yeah, I think and that's the other part of it. I think also to us, that's the paradigm shift here too, is the community part of gaming, right? Like community, if you look at the history of games over the last decade, community has become a bigger and bigger thing. You see with Discord, and every game has a Discord server, and the community's involved and they're talking to the developers. Blockchain is the evolution of that. It takes it to the next level because now these players actually have agency. They're part of the game. They're taking ownership of the assets, and eventually will have governance. And we have been super leaning in as much as we can to our community from day one. We encourage feedback, and we look at them as like one of our team members, basically. And so we look forward to instituting, voting and governance. And literally, we're talking about it yesterday, even just in the short term, we have a plan to sort of cycle in our champions and bring some back. And we're just talking about, hey, let's let players vote. Which ones do they want to come back first? Which are the most popular, and things like that, I think are critical to this space.
Yeah, the governance is a really strong indicator. I think that this sector allows the video game place to grow much bigger than it is currently at.
And it shouldn't be just based on how many tokens you own. Like we want to come up with a formula based on how much you play, your tokens and other factors that show how committed you really are.
Yeah, this was the emerging aspect I started to see here as well, as kind of the identity of the person. A lot of what holds people back from regular financial services is we don't their birth certificate and their bank card. They can't get like a huge chunk of the world doesn't have a bank card. But here within a video game, you can see how much time they're spending. Are they collaborating? They can build an identity that's totally disconnected from their name. Um, I'm really fascinated by what the next few years of growth looks like. You tell me about the current conversation between like the video game builders and the blockchain side of things, because I'm interested to see, is there a better adoption in Rust or Solidity programming because of the nature of the relationship of a more advanced programmer and developer in a game versus the kind of Turing complete formats in Solidity? Yeah, how's that conversation so far?
Boy, I'm not even sure I'm qualified to answer that because we're in our own little world building and Polygon, Ethereum. I mean, I know Rust. I believe it's much harder to find. I've been told people who know that well. I mean, I think from our side, and in terms of what you're going to see over the next couple years, and this space is so early. And in terms of how to even make a blockchain game and put it together technically from the back end, which parts are Web3, which parts are Web2? Because the reality is the game, a good chunk of the game has to be Web2. It just, the blockchain cannot handle the amount of transactions. And if you look at the history of the space, the few that have tried to make blockchain only games have pretty much had to revert and switch back to having the game itself live on Web 2. But we're basically building a hybrid where people do truly own their assets, if they choose to, and they live in their wallets, and we don't have any custody over them, and we sort of just read the blockchain, as they come into the game to sort of take a snapshot of their assets. So you're going to see a lot of very different ways these games are being built from the technological standpoint, but also then you just get into the design side. And this is where I've said this many times, is that the different thing about this space is, compared to past paradigm shifts in games, is there's always been this shining example that everyone is just like, okay, Farmville, let's copy that. Super Spell, it's killing it, everyone copies that. The Zynga games, etc. We don't really have that here. We have Axie, but Axie was obviously flawed. Everyone knows that. Axie knows it. Everyone's trying to fix it. So like what you had, I think, which is interesting in this space, and ourselves, we're not we were part of this too, to an extent, is that you get caught up in sort of the thing of the moment, and you see, it seems like it was very successful, but then you start to realize, wait a minute, this isn't going to be able to survive long term. And that's really been our goal, to build something that's going to be here for a long time. And so it's actually been interesting and refreshing with what's going on in the market and everything. And it's sort of allowed us to not worry so much about the NFT side and the sales and all this stuff, and really just focus on building something great. And how do we bring more users into this? Let's not gate this game, where you have to own, all these assets to play it. Because that if you want to scale, if this industry is going to scale, if Web3 games are sort of a gateway, right, which some people think, to bring in Web2 people just to blockchain in general, we have to have that. And we have to have easy UI. We have to ease them into that. And games are supposedly good at that, right? We've been doing that for a decade with free to play and other ways where, hey, just try this. And, sort of eventually teasing them to get them to buy in. And I think here the value proposition is so much greater. It's a much easier sell long term. But finding the balance between those two types of players, that's like the biggest thing we've been focused on.
Yeah, there's getting an internal economy working correctly is no easy task. You're right. There isn't, we don't have a a who's done it best model yet. I think there's a huge amount of validity to what you said earlier, which is just we're so early here. We're still figuring out how some of this even works together. You know, you've brought up ownership a bunch in IP. How do you see the IP and the ownership being passed on to holders? Like you know, you brought up South Park, and I also am a huge fan of South Park, and I think to myself, you know, what would have happened if Trey Parker, Matt Stone launched this as like a 1,000-piece NFT set, and Cartman was one of those characters, and I minted Cartman. What's Cartman worth based off that kind of IP, and what does that look like over the growth of the development of a brand and a franchise? What's your thoughts around this kind of vague sentiment?
I think it's very new, you know, and it's evolving as we speak. And we took a slightly more cautious approach, where, you know, you do fully own your NFT, and basically if you did want to do something with it from a commercial standpoint, you can write us and we'll, you know, sort of take things case by case. We didn't give out, you know, blanket full ownership, you know, to the IP. We sort of treated it more like, you know, you're getting a baseball card of this character. You don't really necessarily, you own that baseball card. You don't own the underlying, you know, IP rights to it. But honestly, I'm a fan of that moving forward. I think maybe, again, you know, we just took a cautious approach at first because things are changing so rapidly. And like you had, you know, Bored Apes coming out, and pretty sure they, you know, gave full ownership, but now they're almost like reversing course, you know, with some of their new things. And I think, you know, as that evolves, and I think, again, number one thing, what does the community want? If that's something our community starts screaming and they want, we're very open to that moving forward.
One of the other aspects here too was also about how one could integrate the, let's say, owned assets in the free to play. So with a character suite of 10,000, you know, when you first join Fortnite, you're kind of given a stock character. That character runs around and does things in the game that's engaging and earns. How are we looking at, I guess, the core assets? Like if there's 10,000 characters and they get loaned out to a community base of hundreds of thousands of people, measuring the generative effect of, like you're saying, the collaboration. What else are they doing in the game? Are they completing more quests? Are they sharing it socially? What is the future of free to play and play to own look like?
Yep. I mean, this is exactly what we've been really dialing into, honestly, and sort of tweaking our design a little bit, honestly, over the last few weeks. And, you know, it's honestly we spent months and months working on our in-game economy. And I'm sort of at the point where I think that's very secondary now to just making sure the game is fun, you know, and economies can be worked out in balance. And we've always, you know, said we're going to take a very cautious approach, you know, with the economy. So, yeah, I mean, I think, sorry, repeat the question. I lost my train. I knew that would happen once.
No, it's okay. Well, you know, there's part of the thing that holds a lot of people back is the ability to play the game.
Oh,
like
yes.
in the early days, paying for NFTs.
Yeah. Got it. No. So yeah, we're putting a lot of time into that path. Exactly what you're talking about, where players and our game, you know, we kind of have different types of characters, right? So we have the Mojos, which are all unique, but let's just put those aside for a second. Like our champions are more like, you know, again, like a magic card, right? So there's thousands, let's say, of the same champion type, which you can then level up and add different abilities and eventually skins to. So we're putting in a system. If you own those, you know, you can buy those in the open market, let's say, or when we do sales at sort of the normal price, if you want to, like, just like in a free to play game, if you don't want to put in the time. But then we want to have a path for the free players where if they hit certain conditions in a certain amount of time, and to your point, it'll either be gated by time or by quantity, right? So there's, you know, it's kind of like a race, right? Who can mint these, let's say, we'll just use the number 10,000 characters first, but you have to do it by playing through a season that lasts 2 to 3 months, and based on your win percentage and quests and other sort of things that we're putting in place, gives you the opportunity to then actually mint those in NFTs at, an incredible deal, right? Like way less than you would have paid for them originally. So that's what we're sort of trying to find that right balance for. And the more you own, because we want to foster collection. Collection is huge. We want people to collect all the champions. So we're also sort of having something in the game we're calling challenges, let's say, which are sort of, we're also going to have forms of battle passes as well. I'm talking about all kinds of stuff that we're still fleshing out here, but the amount of assets that you own will sort of be calculated right into like a score, like your collection score, let's just call it for the moment. And that will also have a factor into what you can earn in tournaments and other parts of the game. So it's never a negative not to own them, but it's a positive if you do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, one of the ways I was trying to measure and flesh some of this out is because I'm not a gamer, I've started playing Fortnite with some friends just to try to understand more, why people play games and show up. And we've got an example of a multi-billion-dollar company. The other thing I've always thought was interesting too is that if you're dealing with billions of dollars, you usually have equally large marketing budget effectively. So Red Bull, as an example, spends like $2 or $3 billion a year on getting people to jump out of planes. And this idea of giving back to the community has been so powerful, where you just get what ends up being large sums of value to some degree or another because of your relationship with the company. And I thought to myself, if Red Bull if every time you bought Red Bull had kept like a membership, and if you were in this tier of membership, or you could buy your way into this tier of membership, maybe you'd win $1 million that year. Because if they were giving away a few $1 billion every year, guarantee you're going to have lifelong fans. And this is one of the parts that I've found, how does a brand give as much back to the community so you have these extraordinarily loud vocal supporters? I don't know if you like have a Ethereum name or anything like this, but for every Ethereum name, they gave you like $15,000 worth of tokens at a time. But even still today, that's like $2,000 or $3,000. Like in what company, like you ever go to GoDaddy, spend $30 and then have them give you $3,000 back because they grew that much? And this is what I always find fascinating is, we already know that video games can make a crap ton of money. And if you have a crap ton of money, you give that back to your community, you have an extraordinarily vocal community of supporters. So you have this mixed feedback of not only do people like the game, but people can not just earn. If the brand IP, if everything grows to these exponential benefits that are currently there, when you go from a small game to like a Fortnite sized game, how much money could these guys give back every year? But here's a question you might know more specific answers to. How much revenue does Fortnite make from just selling like skins or V-Bucks?
I do not know the answer to that off the top of my head, but I'll just say it's a lot.
Yes, I thought you might know the ballpark range. I should look.
Yeah,
I know it's a lot.
I know more the Web3 numbers these days. It's sort of, the Fortnite numbers are so ridiculous. It's hard to.
Well, these are. We like those monstrous outsized.
Yeah, no.
Growth. They're good.
I should know it. I should know.
Good measurements. Everybody's looking for asymmetry here, Michael.
And a lot of times it's also like very hard to get those numbers because I have looked.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Fair enough. Okay. Well, I apologize for posing a question.
No. Put me on the spot. I don't know. I'm not a stat guy.
Yeah. No. That's fair. So I want to leave the next bit here for you. How can everyone learn about Planet Mojo? What's the roadmap look like? And what do we do next?
Yeah, well, with the trailer thanks for showing that. We're also giving away, in the spirit of what you're talking about, a free collector's pass movie poster NFT, which anyone can sign up for. Just go to that trailer. There's a link for it. It's on pre-mint if people have used pre-mint for other projects, and that's free. We're giving them away to everyone. And then really follow us on Twitter, join our Discord or Telegram. We have a lot planned for the next few months in terms of giveaways. As you were just talking about too, rewarding we're giving away champions to our Mojo holders, and there'll be other things that we're going to be doing giveaways with over the next few months, really leading up to the game. We'll be showing off gameplay more and more. We wanted to show the trailer first, and now we'll be following that up, showing the actual game. And our target is to have the early access of the game come out at the end of the summer, and then a wider release later in the fall. So yeah, just, join us on Discord, get involved. We'd love to hear from the community. Check out our website, etc. All the usual touch points.
Awesome. Yeah, the trailer looks fantastic. I love the storyline and the art that's beginning to take shape as well. All those links that Michael was mentioning are down in the description below. Michael, thanks for joining us today. For the Bear family, if you listened to the whole 45 minutes of conversation, thank you for joining us.
Wow, that went fast.
Fantastic.
Thanks for having us.
It's always a pleasure. We're gonna keep up to date. I'm fascinated by the game sector. We've decided to plant a flag here and stay for a while. Michael, there's a few things that the society and culture has kept around for a long time: speculation, money. Games are one of those. Governance apparently too. So games is out of my radar, but it's got a lot of staying power. So we'll be excited to stay up to date with you over the months and years ahead. And we're excited. Everyone, check out the links, watch that trailer, join their Discord, and yeah, we look forward to participating and playing some of the games. Actually, Michael, tell us on what do you call it, device am I going to be able to play these games? Someone put out a game.
Yeah. Let me
PC only. I'm like, guys,
I'll give you the basic facts, which I didn't even do. So we're also on Polygon. I didn't mention that. The game's going to debut on WebGL, so you play it right in your desktop in the browser, full 3D AAA graphics using WebGL. We will have a mobile version coming out after that in the fall. We wanted to start with the web because the whole wallet connectivity is just so much more straightforward. And but yeah, it's going to be very accessible to all, and that was one of our main goals with how we're building it.
And I'll be able to use my Mac then. I don't have to open up my slow PC.
Yes, depending on how old it is. Yes, you will.
No, it's a brand new Mac, but it's an old PC.
Oh, then you should be good.
Yeah, I have a PC for those .exe files. I every now and then have to do a beta test on or something, but that's great. I'm glad to hear, because I like my Mac better, in case anyone cared. Mike, it's been a great time chatting. I'll keep you on for a few minutes afterwards. Bear family, give us a thumbs up, share the content far and wide. Make sure you follow Planet Mojo on Twitter to keep up with their updates, and their Discord as well. Be careful of Discord and any people sending you links, no matter which group you're in. Just always remember,
we will never DM you.
Yeah, people, just be careful of Discord in general. It's a great place to hang out with community, but it's a horrible place for spam links. So just be careful of that, and you should be fine. And phishing emails, ladies and gentlemen. Security, get your money off exchanges too while we're at it. Shit. Anyways, with the Arcane Bear, Michael, thank you for your time today. We'll see you guys again on the next episode. Awesome. Okay.